I trusted him like family. He said he just needed a place to crash for one night. That was 6 months ago. And now I know what he's been doing while I sleep. My name is Rachel Torres, and I'm a pediatric nurse. I thought helping people was always the right thing to do, until kindness destroyed everything I had. The favor. The rain hammered against my apartment windows like angry fists that October night. I was already in my pajamas, scrolling through my phone after a long shift at the hospital, when the buzzer rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart jumped a little as I pressed the intercom button. Rachel, it's Marcus. I'm so sorry to bother you this late. Marcus. My brother Dylan's best friend since middle school. The guy who'd been at every family barbecue, every holiday dinner, every birthday party for the past 20 years. I buzzed him up without thinking twice. When I opened the door, he stood there completely soaked, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. Water dripped from his jacket onto my doormat. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. Marcus, oh my God, what happened? I pulled him inside quickly. My girlfriend kicked me out, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Just threw all my stuff out on the lawn. I didn't know where else to go. Dylan's out of town and I'm so sorry, Rachel. I know it's late. My heart went out to him immediately. This was Marcus, the guy who'd taught me how to ride a bike when I was 7, the one who'd scared off my awful ex-boyfriend in college just by showing up at my door. He was family, even if we didn't share blood. Don't be ridiculous, I said, grabbing a towel from the bathroom. You're soaked. Let me get you some dry clothes and make up the guest room. Just for one night, he promised, taking the towel gratefully. I'll figure something out tomorrow, I swear. That smile, the one I'd always trusted, spread across his face. It was warm and grateful and a little embarrassed. I smiled back, feeling good about being the kind of person who helped when someone needed it. That's what nurses do, right? We care for people. I made up the guest room with fresh sheets while Marcus changed into an old sweatshirt and sweatpants I kept around for guests. I showed him where the towels were, told him to help himself to anything in the kitchen, and went back to my room, feeling like I'd done the right thing. As I lay in bed that night, listening to the rain finally slow to a gentle patter, I felt peaceful. I had no idea that opening my door to Marcus would be the biggest mistake of my life. The extended stay one night became 3, then a week, then 2 weeks, then somehow, impossibly, a full month had passed. At first, Marcus's excuses made perfect sense. His car wouldn't start and he needed to save up for repairs. Then he had a job interview that got rescheduled. Then his ex-girlfriend was acting crazy, and he needed to lay low for a while. Each reason sounded legitimate on its own. I really appreciate this, Rachel, he'd say every few days, usually while I was making coffee before my morning shift. I'm putting out applications everywhere. Something's bound to come through soon. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But as the days stretched on, I started feeling a creeping discomfort I couldn't quite name. It wasn't that Marcus was messy or rude. He actually kept his space clean and even did dishes sometimes. It was something else, something subtle that I couldn't put my finger on. The way he'd appear in the kitchen doorway just as I was getting home from work, like he'd been waiting. The way he'd ask about my schedule for the week, which patients had given me trouble, which doctors I'd worked with. At first, it seemed like normal conversation. Then it started feeling like an interrogation. You look tired, he'd say, his eyes lingering on me a little too long. Long shift? Yeah, we had 3 emergencies in pediatric ICU, I'd answer, just trying to be polite. You work too hard. His voice would soften in a way that made my skin prickle. You need someone to take care of you for a change. I brushed off these feelings, telling myself I was being paranoid. This was Marcus. Safe, familiar Marcus. When I finally worked up the nerve to call my brother Dylan about the situation, he completely dismissed my concerns. Come on, Rach, the guy's going through a rough patch, Dylan said, annoyance clear in his voice. He just needs some time to get back on his feet. You've got that extra room anyway. What's the big deal? It's been a month, Dylan. So, you'd want someone to help you out if you were in his position, wouldn't you? The guilt hit me like a punch to the stomach. Dylan was right. I would want help. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I was being a bad person for wanting my space back. But that night, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, I heard Marcus moving around in the living room. His footsteps were slow, deliberate. They stopped outside my bedroom door for what felt like a full minute before continuing down the hallway. Something in his eyes had changed when he looked at me now. The warmth had been replaced with something else, something that made me want to lock my bedroom door at night. So I did. Strange sounds. The first time I heard the creaking floorboards outside my bedroom, I assumed I was dreaming. I'd worked a double shift, 15 hours straight, and exhaustion can play tricks on your mind. But when I jolted awake at 3:17 a.m., I remember the exact time because I stared at my alarm clock for a full minute. The sound was unmistakable. The old hardwood floors in my apartment had a distinctive creak, especially the board right outside my bedroom door. Creak, pause, creak. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I held my breath, listening. The sound stopped the instant I moved. Complete silence. "Marcus?" I called out softly. No answer. I waited for 5 minutes, my phone clutched in my hand, ready to call 911, but nothing else happened. Eventually, I convinced myself that it was just the building settling. Or maybe Marcus had gotten up to use the bathroom. Old buildings make noise. That's normal, except it happened again the next night. Same time, between 3 and 3:30 a.m., the slow, deliberate creak of floorboards, stopping right outside my door. When I sat up, the sound stopped immediately. When I called out, there was no answer. By the third night, I was terrified. I barely slept, lying there in the darkness with my eyes wide open, waiting for the sound. When it came, 3:24 a.m., I was ready. I counted the creaks. 7 of them, spaced about 30 seconds apart. Someone was standing outside my door, shifting their weight from foot to foot. This time I jumped out of bed and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. The bathroom light was off. Marcus's door was closed. But the air in the hallway felt different, disturbed, like someone had just moved through it quickly. And I swear I could smell Marcus's cologne lingering there. The next morning I confronted him as casually as I could manage over coffee. "Did you need something from me last night?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "I thought I heard someone outside my door." Marcus looked up from his phone with a confused expression that seemed almost too perfect. "Outside your door? No, I slept straight through the night. Why? Is something wrong?" I keep hearing noises at night." "Footsteps." He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This place is old, Rachel. Buildings make noise. You're probably just stressed from work. You know, sleep deprivation can cause paranoia." That word, paranoia, hit me like a slap. It was the same word Dylan had used on the phone. Were they talking about me? Had Marcus told my brother that I was acting strange? "Yeah," I said quietly, looking down at my coffee. "You're probably right." But my gut screamed that something was very, very wrong. And I'd learned in nursing school to trust my gut. It had saved more than one patient's life. That night, I pushed my dresser in front of my bedroom door before going to sleep. The discovery: I came home early from my hospital shift on a Thursday afternoon, exhausted and fighting off a headache. We'd been short-staffed, and I'd picked up an extra few hours. But the attending physician sent me home when she noticed I was practically dead on my feet. "You're no good to these kids if you collapse," Dr. Patel had said firmly. "Go home, Rachel. Sleep." So I did. I trudged up the 3 flights to my apartment, already imagining my bed and maybe a hot shower first. I unlocked the door as quietly as possible, not wanting to wake Marcus if he was napping. He'd mentioned something about working night shifts at some warehouse job he'd supposedly just started. The apartment was silent. Marcus's shoes weren't by the door. He must have been out. Good, I thought. I'd have the place to myself for once. I headed down the hallway toward my bedroom, already pulling my scrubs top over my head. That's when I noticed it. My bedroom door was slightly open. Just a crack. Maybe 2 inches. I stopped walking. My heart began to race. I always locked my bedroom door before leaving for work. Always. It had become a ritual over the past few weeks, ever since the nighttime sounds started. I'd turn the lock, test the handle twice, and then leave. I was certain I'd locked it that morning. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open fully. Everything looked normal at first glance. My bed was made. I always made it before work. My curtains were drawn the way I'd left them, but something felt off, wrong, violated. I stepped inside slowly, my nurse's training kicking in as I cataloged the details. My dresser drawers weren't quite closed. The top one, where I kept my underwear and bras, was open maybe half an inch. The second drawer, with my pajamas and workout clothes, was the same. I never left drawers open. Never. My jewelry box, a small wooden box my grandmother had given me, had been moved. I kept it precisely aligned with the corner of my dresser. Now it sat exactly 2 inches to the left. I knew because the dust outline on the dresser surface showed exactly where it should have been. Someone had been in my room. Someone had gone through my things. My hands shook as I checked my closet. Clothes pushed slightly to one side like someone had rifled through them. My hamper, the lid was off, sitting on the floor beside it. I felt sick, violated. This was my private space, my sanctuary, and someone had invaded it. There was only one person with access to my apartment. That evening, after Marcus came home, whistling some tune I didn't recognize, I went to the drugstore. I told him I needed to pick up a prescription. What I actually bought was a small, discreet, hidden camera, the kind that looks like a phone charger. I'd seen them advertised online, never thinking I'd need one. While Marcus was in the shower that night, I installed it on my dresser, positioning it to capture the entire room. The angle was perfect. It would record anyone who entered. I barely slept that night, knowing what I might find on that recording. The footage. I couldn't bring myself to check the camera footage right away. For 3 days, I went to work, came home, smiled at Marcus, and pretended everything was normal, but the camera kept recording, its little red light hidden behind the fake charging port. Finally, on my lunch break on Monday, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and opened the app on my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The first clip loaded. Timestamp 2:47 a.m. The night after I'd installed the camera. I watched my bedroom door open slowly. A figure stepped inside, outlined by the hallway light behind him. Marcus. I watched as he stood there in the doorway for a full minute, just staring at my bed where I was sleeping. The night vision on the camera was good enough that I could see his face clearly. He wasn't sleepy or confused. He was alert, focused, watching me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. Then he moved into the room. My phone slipped from my hands and hit the car floor. I grabbed it back with shaking fingers and kept watching, even though every instinct screamed at me to stop. Marcus went through my dresser drawers one by one, slowly, methodically. He held up items of my clothing, underwear, bras, pajamas, examining them in the dim light. He brought them to his face. I watched him close his eyes and inhale deeply. I thought I might throw up right there in my car. The video continued. He went to my closet, ran his hands through my hanging clothes. He picked up the shirt I'd worn the day before from my hamper and pressed it against his chest. Then he approached my bed. I was sleeping in the frame, completely unaware, vulnerable. Marcus stood over me for what the timestamp showed was 7 full minutes, just standing there, watching me sleep. At one point, he reached out his hand, hovering it inches above my face, but he didn't touch me. The clip ended. There were more. Every single night for the past 3 days, the same thing. Marcus entering my room between 2 and 4 a.m., going through my belongings, watching me sleep. In one clip, he picked up my hairbrush from the nightstand and pressed it to his face, running the bristles across his cheek. I sat in my car, tears streaming down my face, my whole body shaking. I felt sick, violated, terrified. This was my home, my safe space, and it had been invaded every single night while I slept, completely unaware. How long had this been going on? Before I installed the camera, I mean, weeks since he'd moved in? The worst part wasn't just what he was doing, it was the look on his face in the videos. He wasn't guilty or ashamed. He looked satisfied, possessive, like I was something that belonged to him. I realized then that Marcus had never needed a place to stay. This had been his plan all along. The confrontation gone wrong. I couldn't keep living with this secret, couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. That evening, after my shift ended, I drove home with the video clips downloaded to my phone, my tablet, and uploaded to a cloud storage account. I had evidence now. Clear, undeniable proof. Marcus was in the living room when I walked in, watching TV like he owned the place. He smiled when he saw me, that same smile I'd trusted for 20 years. "Hey, Rachel, how was work?" "We need to talk." My voice came out steadier than I felt. Now, something flickered in his eyes. Was it surprise? Fear? It vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "Sure, what's up?" He muted the TV and turned to face me. I sat down in the chair across from him, deliberately keeping distance between us. My phone was already unlocked in my hand, the video queued up and ready to play. "I know you've been coming into my room at night," I said quietly. "I have proof." I expected him to deny it, to act shocked or confused. Instead, his expression went completely blank. Not angry, not embarrassed, just blank, like a mask had dropped away. "Show me," he said. I turned my phone toward him and hit play. We watched together in silence as he entered my room, went through my things, stood over my sleeping body. The footage was clear and damning. When the clip ended, I looked up at him, expecting, what, an apology, an explanation, shame. Instead, Marcus's face transformed into something I'd never seen before. Cold, hard, calculating. This wasn't the Marcus I'd known. This was someone else entirely, and he'd been hiding inside my friend's face all along. "You have no proof that would hold up anywhere," he said quietly, his voice completely calm. "That's your own apartment. I live here now. I could say you invited me into your room. I could say we're in a relationship and you're trying to frame me now that you want me out." My blood turned to ice. No one would believe that. Wouldn't they? He leaned forward slightly. "I've been telling your brother for weeks how stressed you've been, how paranoid, how you keep accusing me of things that haven't happened. Dylan thinks you're losing it, Rachel. He told me so." The words hit me like physical blows. Dylan knew? Marcus had been planning this, laying groundwork, making sure no one would believe me? "You need to leave," I said, my voice shaking now. "Get out of my apartment." Marcus smiled then, not his old warm smile, but something cruel and satisfied. "Besides, where am I supposed to go, Rachel? You let me stay here. You never asked me to sign anything, never gave me a deadline. You know what that means legally? I'm a tenant now. You can't just kick me out. You'd have to go through formal eviction proceedings. That takes months." He was right. I'd looked it up weeks ago when I'd first started feeling uncomfortable. In my state, after 30 days, even without a lease, he had established residency. I'd have to file paperwork, go to court, wait for a judgment. It could take 3 months or more. "So here's how this is going to work," Marcus continued, standing up now, using his height to intimidate me. "You're going to delete those videos. You're going to stop with this paranoid behavior, and we're going to live here together like roommates until I decide I'm ready to leave. Understood?" I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, this stranger wearing my friend's face. "I asked if you understood, Rachel." "I heard you," I whispered. He smiled again and turned back to his TV show, unmuting it like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just threatened me in my own home. I went to my room, locked the door, pushed the dresser in front of it again, and cried until I couldn't breathe. The trap tightens. After our confrontation, Marcus stopped pretending. He stopped making excuses about looking for his own place. He stopped offering to help with bills or groceries. He'd won, and he knew it. The comments started slowly, escalating day by day. "You're wearing that to work?" he'd say when I came out in my scrubs. "It's pretty tight. The dads probably love it." "Who are you texting?" when I checked my phone at the breakfast table. "A guy from the hospital? You should introduce me." "You're going out with your friends tonight. You've been going out a lot lately. People might think you're avoiding home for a reason." Everything I did was suddenly under scrutiny. My schedule, my friends, my clothes, my food choices. He'd comment if I wore makeup, comment if I didn't. Ask who I was trying to impress if I dressed up. Ask if I was depressed if I wore sweatpants. I started spending more time at work, picking up extra shifts. Staying late to do paperwork I could have done at home. Anything to avoid being in that apartment with him. When I finally broke down and called Dylan again, begging him to talk to Marcus, my brother's response made everything worse. "Jesus, Rachel, what's your problem? Marcus said you've been acting really weird lately, paranoid, mean to him for no reason." "Dylan, he's been going into my room at night." "Oh my God, not this again. Do you hear yourself? You sound crazy." "Marcus is worried about you. He said you're not sleeping, you're anxious all the time, you keep making these wild accusations. Maybe you need to talk to someone, like a therapist." The betrayal of my own brother's words felt like a knife between my ribs. Marcus had gotten to him first, painted me as unstable, neurotic, paranoid. Every complaint I made now just reinforced the narrative he'd already created. I realized then how calculated this all was. Marcus hadn't just invaded my home. He'd systematically isolated me, turned my own family against me, and trapped me in a situation where I had no power and no one would believe me. He'd been planning this for months, maybe years. All those family dinners, all those holiday parties. He'd been studying me, learning my habits, my routines, my vulnerabilities. The breakup with his girlfriend had probably been fake, just an excuse to get his foot in my door. That week, I noticed other things. My mail had been opened and carefully resealed. My laptop had been moved on my desk. Someone had gone through my purse. My wallet was returned to a different pocket than where I kept it. Marcus was establishing complete control over my life, and I was powerless to stop him. One night, I heard him on the phone in his room. The walls were thin enough that I could make out some words. Exactly according to plan. She's too nice to actually do anything. Yeah, I told you she'd let me stay. No, Dylan completely believes me. She's basically isolated herself. He was talking about me, laughing about how easy I'd been to manipulate. I sat on my bedroom floor with my back against the locked door. The dresser pushed against it and realized I'd become a prisoner in my own home. Marcus was playing the victim to everyone else while systematically destroying my sense of safety and sanity. But I wasn't going to give up. I just needed a different strategy. If I couldn't force him out, I'd have to be smarter than him. I'd have to outthink someone who'd been planning this for years. I'd have to become someone I'd never been before. The breaking point. The breaking point came on a random Tuesday morning. I'd called in sick to work. I genuinely felt ill from the stress and lack of sleep. Marcus had left for his supposed warehouse job around 8 a.m., and I finally had the apartment to myself. I should have rested. Instead, something compelled me to search his room. I know it was wrong. I know it was an invasion of privacy. But this man had been invading mine for months, and I needed to know what I was dealing with. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening to me. His room was neat, surprisingly so. The bed was made, clothes folded. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first. Then I opened his laptop. He hadn't even password protected it. The arrogance of that, the assumption that I'd never dare to look, made my hands shake with anger. What I found made me physically sick. There was a folder labeled R on his desktop. Just the letter R. When I clicked it open, my vision blurred with tears. Hundreds of photos of me. Hundreds. They were organized by date, going back months. No, over a year. Long before he'd moved in. Pictures of me leaving my apartment building, getting into my car, at the grocery store, at the hospital. Pictures through my windows. Pictures of me sleeping, eating, watching TV, taking off my makeup at night. Some were taken with a zoom lens from outside my building. Some were clearly taken from inside my apartment during his visits for family dinners or parties. Angles from my bathroom, my bedroom, my closet. He'd been stalking me for over a year. The photos were annotated with notes. Wore blue scrubs today, her favorite color. She was smiling at the new resident. Need to handle that. She bought wine tonight. Meeting someone, followed her to friend's house. Just girls. Safe. There were videos too. Me showering, recorded somehow through a crack in my bathroom window. Me changing clothes, captured by what must have been a hidden camera he'd planted during one of his visits. Me sleeping, hours and hours of footage of me sleeping, completely vulnerable and unaware. Some of the images had been edited, my face photoshopped onto other bodies in romantic poses, couple photos with my face pasted next to his, wedding photos, photos of us with children, my face, his face, combined in fake family portraits. He'd built an entire fantasy life with me as the unwilling star. I found chat logs too, conversations with someone named Brother Jay. I realized with horror that it was Dylan. Marcus had been sending my brother messages for months about how difficult I was being, how worried he was about my mental health, how I was pushing away everyone who cared about me. Dylan had responded with sympathy and concern, suggesting Marcus be patient with me, that I was going through something. The manipulation went deeper than I'd imagined. Marcus had spent over a year preparing for this, learning my patterns, isolating me socially, turning my family against me preemptively, creating a narrative where he was the concerned friend and I was the unstable woman who couldn't be trusted. There was one final document, a text file labeled Plan. I opened it. It detailed everything, how he'd fake a breakup to get into my apartment, how long he'd wait before accidentally mentioning concerns about me to Dylan, which of my belongings he'd go through first, how he'd gradually escalate his presence until I couldn't remember what life was like before he was there. The final line made my blood run cold. She'll either accept it eventually or she'll break. Either way, I get what I want. I realized then that asking him to leave, filing for eviction, calling the police, none of it would be enough. Marcus wasn't just a creep or a stalker, he was dangerous, calculated. He'd spent a year of his life planning how to consume mine. If I went to the police with just the videos, it would be his word against mine. Dylan would testify that I'd been acting paranoid. Marcus would say I was a scorned woman making false accusations. And given the tenant laws, he could drag this out for months. Living in my apartment, watching me, waiting. No, I needed something bigger. Something undeniable. Something that would not only get him out of my life, but ensure he could never come back. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything on his laptop. Every photo, every chat log, every document. I uploaded them all to 3 different cloud accounts, emailed copies to a trusted friend, and saved copies to 3 different flash drives. Then I had an idea. I opened his search history and found what I was looking for. Marcus had stalked other women before me. There were forums where he'd posted asking for advice on surveillance techniques. There were online orders for hidden cameras and tracking devices. And there was one name that appeared over and over in his searches. Jennifer Hale. I Googled her name combined with Marcus's name and found a police report from 3 years ago. Jennifer Hale had filed a restraining order against Marcus Webb for stalking and harassment. Marcus had done this before, and that meant someone else out there knew what he was capable of. Someone who might be willing to help me. The plan, finding Jennifer Hale, took less time than I expected. She was on social media with her profiles set to public. Probably she'd learned that hiding made things worse with someone like Marcus. I sent her a direct message, explaining who I was and asking if we could talk. She responded within an hour. "He's doing it again, isn't he? Call me." We talked for 3 hours that night, me locked in my bedroom with music playing to mask my voice, while Marcus watched TV in the living room. Jennifer told me everything. Marcus had been her boyfriend's roommate 3 years ago. He'd developed an obsession with her, just like with me. He'd installed cameras, collected photos, stalked her for months. When she finally got the restraining order, he'd vanished, but not before destroying her relationship with her boyfriend, who'd believed Marcus's lies about Jennifer being unstable and paranoid. "I tried to warn people," Jennifer said, her voice tight with old pain. "But he's so good at playing the victim, so charming. Everyone thought I was crazy." "Not anymore," I told her. "I have everything documented, photos, videos, chat logs, his entire plan written out in his own words. But I need your help." We spent the next week planning everything down to the minute. Jennifer connected me with a lawyer who specialized in tenant disputes and stalking cases. The lawyer looked at everything I'd gathered and actually smiled. "This is enough," she said, "and more than enough. But we need to be smart about this." I stopped confronting Marcus. I stopped acting scared. Instead, I apologized. "You were right," I told him one evening, forcing myself to sound sincere. "I've been stressed and paranoid. I'm sorry for accusing you of things. You've been a good friend, and I've been treating you terribly." The satisfaction in his eyes made my skin crawl, but I maintained my smile. "I want to make it up to you," I continued. "Let me cook dinner Friday night. A real apology dinner, like a peace offering." Marcus's smile widened. "I'd like that, Rachel. I've missed the old you. The old me, the naive, trusting me who'd opened her door on a rainy night. That version of me was gone forever." I spent the week acting normal, friendly even. I smiled at Marcus's comments instead of flinching. I laughed at his jokes. I asked about his day. He relaxed, believing he'd won, that I'd finally accepted my place in his twisted fantasy. On Thursday, I met with my lawyer one final time. She'd filed paperwork with the court, prepared documentation, coordinated with the police. Everything was ready. "Are you sure about Friday?" she asked. "We could do this without the dinner." "No," I said firmly. "He needs to think he's won completely. He needs to be caught off guard." Friday morning, I went shopping for dinner ingredients. I made lasagna, Marcus's favorite, I'd learned over the years. I bought nice wine. I even bought candles for the table. But I also stopped at the pharmacy and had a quiet conversation with a friend who was a nurse practitioner. She gave me something that would help someone sleep deeply without causing harm. The kind of thing we used in the hospital for patients with severe insomnia. When Marcus came home that evening, the apartment smelled amazing. The table was set beautifully. I'd even put on a nice dress. "Wow," he said, looking around with genuine surprise. "You really went all out." "It's the least I can do," I said, pouring him a generous glass of wine. "To new beginnings?" "To new beginnings," he repeated, raising his glass. We ate dinner. I barely touched my wine while Marcus had 3 glasses. I watched as his movements gradually slowed, his words beginning to slur slightly. "I don't feel so good," he mumbled, putting his fork down. "You should lie down," I suggested. "I think you've had too much wine." He didn't argue. I helped him to his room, where he collapsed onto his bed, asleep within minutes. Then I got to work. One night only, I'd invited Marcus to a peace offering dinner with special wine. wine that contained a carefully measured dose of prescription sleep medication, enough to ensure he'd sleep deeply but harmlessly through what came next. While he slept off the effects in his bedroom, I worked through the night with precision I'd learned from nursing, where every minute could mean the difference between life and death. My lawyer arrived first, at 11 p.m. exactly, then a locksmith, referred by Jennifer Hale, then 2 friends from the hospital who'd agreed to serve as witnesses. We worked quietly, efficiently, like a surgical team. The locksmith changed every lock in the apartment. My lawyer presented me with the restraining order she'd filed that afternoon, approved by a judge based on the evidence I'd provided. The police had already been notified and were standing by. While Marcus slept, we packed every single item he owned. Clothes, toiletries, his laptop, his phone charger, everything. It all went into boxes and bags that we carried down to a storage unit I'd rented under Jennifer's name. The rental was paid for 1 month, enough time for Marcus to retrieve his things under supervised conditions. At 5 a.m., Jennifer arrived. She'd driven 6 hours to be there, wanting to see the end of the nightmare we'd both lived through. By 6 a.m., everything was ready. Marcus's belongings were gone, the locks were changed. My lawyer had prepared all the legal documents. The police were parked outside, waiting for my call. I made coffee and waited. Marcus woke up at 7:30 a.m. I heard him stumbling around in his room, confused and groggy. Then I heard his footsteps in the hallway. "Rachel?" His voice was thick with sleep. What happened? I feel awful." I was sitting at the kitchen table with my lawyer on one side and Jennifer on the other. The restraining order was in front of me. "Good morning, Marcus," I said calmly. "We need to talk." He appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with growing confusion that quickly shifted to alarm. His eyes landed on Jennifer, and his face went white. "What is she doing here?" he asked, his voice suddenly sharp, the drowsiness disappearing. "I'm here because Rachel asked me to be," Jennifer said, her voice steady and strong. "I'm here to watch you face consequences for once." "Rachel, what's going on?" Marcus looked at me, trying for that charming smile, but it came out wrong. "Is this about our fight? I thought we moved past that." "We had a nice dinner." "You mean the dinner where I drugged your wine so you'd sleep through the night while I removed every trace of you from my home?" I interrupted. "That dinner?" His face went through several expressions: shock, anger, fear, calculation. "You can't do this. I live here. I have tenant rights." "You had tenant rights," my lawyer said, speaking for the first time. She slid a document across the table. "Until you violated the law by stalking, harassing, and conducting illegal surveillance of my client. This is a restraining order. You're required to stay at least 500 feet away from Rachel, her workplace, and this apartment." "This is bullshit," Marcus's voice rose. "You can't prove any of that. It's her word against mine." "It's your own documentation against you," I said quietly. I pulled out my phone and started reading from the text file I'd found on his laptop. Quote, "Phase 1 complete. R, let me move in without any formal agreement. This gives me legal residency and makes it harder for her to remove me. Phase 2, establish myself as the concerned friend to her family, particularly brother Dylan. Phase 3, gradually increase my presence in her private spaces." Marcus's face drained of all color. "Should I continue?" I asked. "I have screenshots of everything, Marcus. Every photo you took of me for over a year, every video you recorded without my consent, every manipulative text you sent to my brother, every search you made about surveillance equipment and how to stalk someone without getting caught." "You went through my computer," he said, his voice low and dangerous now. "That's illegal." "Actually, Bowser, given that you were using it to conduct illegal surveillance and harassment, it's admissible evidence," my lawyer interjected smoothly. "Along with the testimony of Jennifer Hale, who obtained a restraining order against you 3 years ago for the exact same behavior." Marcus's eyes darted to Jennifer, then back to me, then to the door. I could see him calculating, looking for a way out. "The police are outside," I said, answering his unspoken question. "All I have to do is call them. Your belongings are in a storage unit. You'll receive the location and access details through your lawyer, who you're going to need. You have 2 choices. You can leave now, quietly, and deal with this through legal channels, or you can resist, and I'll have you arrested for violating the restraining order before it's even officially served." For a long moment, Marcus just stared at me. Then something in him seemed to break. The mask fell away completely, and what I saw underneath was ugly, pure rage and hatred. "You stupid bitch," he hissed. I spent over a year on you. A year of my life planning, preparing, making sure everything was perfect. You were supposed to— Supposed to what? I interrupted, standing up. Fall in love with you? Be grateful for your obsession? Accept being stalked and violated as some kind of twisted romance? You let me in, he shouted. You invited me into your home. You smiled at me, cooked for me, treated me like family. I treated you like a friend who needed help, I said, my voice cold and steady. And you treated me like property, like something you could study and collect and eventually own. But I'm not yours, Marcus. I never was, and I never will be. Jennifer stood up beside me. They never are, she said to him. That's what you can't understand. We're not characters in your fantasy. We're real people with our own lives, and you have no right to any part of them. Marcus looked between us, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might lunge forward, might try something physical. My hand moved toward my phone, but then he laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You think this is over? You think a piece of paper is going to stop me? No, I said calmly. I think a restraining order, a police record, stalking charges, illegal surveillance charges, and having your name on a public database will stop you. I think Jennifer's testimony about your pattern of behavior will stop you. I think the fact that I've sent copies of all your documentation to everyone in your life, including Dylan, by the way, will stop you. That hit him. You told Dylan? I sent him everything this morning, the photos, the videos, your written plan, the chat logs where you manipulated him against me. He called me an hour ago in tears, apologizing. I paused. He wants you to know that your friendship is over, and if you ever try to contact him again, he'll get his own restraining order. Marcus's face crumpled. Losing his hold on me was one thing, but losing his connection to Dylan, his way into my life, his cover story, his character witness, that was something else entirely. Get out, Marcus, I said quietly. Get out of my home and out of my life. If I ever see you within 500 feet of me, I'm calling the police. If you violate this restraining order even once, you'll go to jail, and trust me, I'll be watching. He stood there for another moment, deflated and defeated. Then, without another word, he turned and walked to the door. He tried the handle and found it locked. The new locks he didn't have keys for. I tossed him a key. That opens the front door only, and I want it back before you step outside. He caught it, unlocked the door, and tossed the key back. It clattered on the table. He looked at me one last time, not with anger now, but with something that might have been genuine confusion. I loved you, he said softly. No, I replied. You love the idea of controlling me. There's a difference. Then he was gone. I locked the door behind him with the new key, my hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Jennifer pulled me into a hug while my lawyer made a call to the police, confirming that Marcus had left voluntarily and the restraining order had been served. We watched from my window as Marcus got into his car and drove away. A police cruiser followed him at a distance, making sure he actually left the area. It's over, Jennifer said softly. You did it, but I shook my head. It's over for now, but I learned something important. What's that? I learned that one night of misplaced trust can haunt you for months. One decision to help someone made with good intentions can unravel your entire life if you're not careful. I looked at Jennifer, then at my lawyer. But I also learned that one night of careful planning, one night of taking control back, can free you. My lawyer started packing up her documents. He'll face charges for the illegal surveillance. The restraining order is good for 5 years, renewable if needed. And the documentation you gathered, it's enough to keep him away. He knows that now. After everyone left, I sat alone in my apartment for the first time in 6 months. Really alone, safe, free. I looked around at my space, my home, and realized how much I'd taken it for granted before. Privacy isn't just a luxury, it's a fundamental right. Trust isn't weakness, it's a gift that should never be weaponized against the giver. I called Dylan that afternoon. He was still crying. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have. You were manipulated too, I said gently. Marcus spent a year preparing for this. He knew exactly what to say to turn you against me. But you're my sister. I should have trusted you over anyone. Now you know, I said. And now we both know what to watch for. People who isolate their targets from family, people who plant seeds of doubt about someone's mental health. People who play the victim while victimizing others. We talked for an hour, rebuilding what Marcus had tried to destroy. That evening, I changed my sheets, burned a candle to clear the air, and reclaimed every inch of my apartment. I took down the hidden camera. I rearranged my furniture. I made the space mine again. Before bed, I stood in my bedroom doorway and listened. No creaking floorboards, no footsteps in the hallway, no one watching me while I slept. Just silence, safe, peaceful silence. I learned that night that helping others is still important, still good, still necessary. But helping should never come at the cost of your own safety or sanity. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're essential. Trust should be earned, not given freely just because someone seems familiar or claims to need help. And I learned that when someone shows you who they really are, when the mask slips and you see the monster underneath, believe it. Act on it. Don't wait for them to change or hope you misunderstood. Most importantly, I learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. Strong enough to fight back when cornered. Strong enough to plan and execute my own rescue when no one else would save me. Marcus had said one night. He'd promised it would be just one night. He was right in the end. It took one night to trap me and one night to free myself. I locked my bedroom door out of habit, then stopped and unlocked it. I didn't need to anymore. This was my home again, and I was the only one who belonged here. I slept that night better than I had in 6 months. Deep, dreamless, safe to sleep. And when I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through my windows, I smiled. I was free.